Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 536's One Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, the diversity bonus, how great teams pay off in the knowledge economy, Chapter 6.
It's great to be back. And for a public policy course, I feel like this chapter is, well, it's where the rubber really meets the road.
It absolutely is. And look, I think we should be honest with everyone listening. When you get your syllabus for a course like this and you see a week dedicated to the diversity bonus, there's a certain reaction,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. A collective groan almost.
Yeah. You immediately file it under HR compliance or, mandatory ethics training. It feels like something you have to do, not something that's core to the mission of building a high-performance organization. It feels soft.
It's the vegetables
Yeah.
of the management curriculum. You know it's good for you, but you don't really expect it to be the key to winning.
Exactly. But what floored me about this chapter 6, diversity bonuses and the business case, is how incredibly, cold it is. And I mean that in the best possible way.
Cold in what sense?
It strips away the moralizing. It stops treating diversity like this charitable act and starts treating it like an engineering problem. It's not about being a good person. It's about why the machine works better when you have different kinds of parts.
That is the whole pivot of the book, really. The author, Scott Page, is making a very deliberate argument. He's saying if your only justification for inclusion is a moral one, you're actually using the weakest argument you have.
And you're setting it up for failure.
You are.
Yeah.
Because you're framing it as a trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the core tension of this chapter, right? The conflict between doing diversity because it's the right thing to do, which a lot of managers see as a kind of tax.
A tax on efficiency.
A tax on efficiency, a tax on speed, a tax on merit. And then there's the other side, doing it because it generates a tangible, measurable bonus.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack this idea. We're going to tear apart that framing of diversity as a tax on excellence. Because, if you're going to be running a public agency or a major corporation, how you think about this one issue might just dictate whether you succeed or fail.
It's the difference between seeing your team as a list of demographic checkboxes to tick off or as a portfolio of cognitive assets you can deploy. It's a fundamental mindset shift.
Okay, so let's start with the basic architecture of his argument. He says organizations basically have 3 different stories they tell themselves to justify diversity. 3 pillars. Let's walk through them.
Right. So the first pillar is the one we've already touched on. It's the normative argument.
The good person argument.
The good person
All right.
argument, essentially.
Yeah.
It's based on ideals of social justice, fairness, and equity. It says that our institutions, they ought to reflect the society they serve. It's about redressing past wrongs. It's a moral imperative.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here because I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, the CEO of Boeing or Ford. My job is to build the best plane or the best truck and to make money for my shareholders. Is there zero business value in the normative argument? Doesn't being seen as the good guy help my brand?
That's a fair question. And the answer is it has some value. It certainly has value in reputation management, maybe in employee morale.
Well, good.
People like to work for a company they feel good about.
Okay.
But Page's point is that structurally, in a capitalist system, the normative argument is weak. It's built on a foundation of sand.
Why?
Because if you justify diversity solely on moral grounds, you are implicitly, and sometimes explicitly, framing it as a trade-off.
A trade-off against what, though?
Against performance, against profit. If you, the CEO, are told you need to hire for diversity to be good, what's the little voice in the back of your head saying? It's saying, okay, so to achieve this social goal, I'm going to have to sacrifice a little bit of quality, or I'm going to have to slow down my hiring process.
I'm not going to be able to get the absolute best person for the job.
Precisely. It becomes what economists call a collective action problem. Society as a whole might benefit from more equity, but my company's bottom line takes the hit. It feels like a tax, a compliance cost.
Which is a terrible way to motivate people to do something. It becomes about avoiding punishment, not seeking a reward.
Exactly. So that leads to the second pillar, which is a bit more pragmatic. It's the demographic argument.
Okay.
This one is less about morals and much more about simple supply and demand. The argument is, look around. The workforce is changing. We're moving toward a majority-minority country. The talent pool is diversifying, whether you like it or not.
So this is the I'm running out of people argument.
Pretty much. It's the idea that if you insist on only hiring from one demographic group, say white men, you are fishing in a rapidly shrinking pond. Eventually, you just run out of talent.
This feels like the warm bodies argument. I don't care who you are, what your background is. I just need 500 software engineers by Q4 and we've run out of the old kind.
It's a step up from the normative case because it's based on necessity, but it's still, in a sense, passive. It's about filling seats to maintain the status quo. It's not about improving performance.
It's not about getting better. It's about not getting worse.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to the third pillar, which is the entire thesis of this book, the diversity bonus logic.
The main event?
This is the argument that cognitively diverse teams will outperform homogeneous teams, that diversity leads to higher profits, more creativity, better problem solving, because of the differences, not in spite of them.
And this is where that term cognitive repertoires comes in. This is the engine of the whole theory.
It is. The bonus logic argues that our identity, our race, our gender, our socioeconomic background, our life experiences shapes how we think.
Yeah.
It gives us different tools. And identity diversity, therefore, is a useful proxy for cognitive diversity. And cognitive diversity is the secret sauce for solving complex problems.
Okay, before we dive deep into the mechanics of that, we have to stay on this trade-off idea for a minute, because it's such a powerful and, frankly, common way of thinking. And the book brings in a very heavy hitter to make this point.
It does. Justice Antonin Scalia.
And he did not pull any punches.
Not at all. This comes from his dissent in the University of Michigan affirmative action case, Grutter v. Bollinger. And it's so important to read his words because he articulates the anti-diversity bonus argument more clearly than almost anyone.
He used this amazing phrase, super duper.
He did. His argument was essentially that a university has a choice. It can either be a diverse university or it can be a super duper elite university. His point was that it cannot be both.
That is the mismatch theory in its purest form. He's saying that the moment you start considering diversity as a factor, you are by definition lowering the bar for merit.
Exactly. For him, it's a zero-sum game. The model in his head is that diversity is a form of charity. He believes that if your only goal is excellence, you find the single best metric, say, an LSAT score, and you rank everyone from top to bottom and draw a line. If the resulting group is homogeneous, so be it. That's what excellence looks like.
And to do anything else, to reach down below that line to grab someone for diversity's sake, is to compromise the quality of the whole enterprise.
That is his entire argument. And here is where Scott Page, the author, does something brilliant. He steps in and says, you know what, Justice Scalia, you are absolutely right.
Which is not what you expect to hear.
Not at all. He says, you're right, but only if we're all running a relay race.
And this is the distinction that changes everything, the difference between additive tasks and complex tasks.
Yes. We have to break this down.
Please do.
Let's use the example from the book. The 1936 U.S. Olympic relay team. Jesse Owens was on that team. 2 African-American runners, 2 Caucasian runners. They won the gold medal. Now, did they win because they were a diverse team?
No, that's absurd. They won because they were the 4 fastest humans they could find.
Exactly. A relay race is a purely additive task. You run your 100 meters, I run mine. Our final score is just the sum of our individual times. Your perspective, your background, your creative problem-solving skills, they add 0 value.
You can't have a creative way to run 100 meters that makes you faster than Usain Bolt.
You cannot. So in an additive task, Scalia's logic holds perfectly. You just want the best individuals based on a single metric. If you swapped out the slowest runner for a slightly faster runner, the team gets better. If you swapped out a fast runner for a slower one just to add some other kind of diversity, the team gets worse, period.
And this is the whole point. Designing a stealth bomber or creating a vaccine or figuring out how to market a new iPhone in Brazil, those are not relay races.
Not even close. Those are complex, multi-dimensional problems. And for those problems, the best individual logic completely falls apart. It's not just wrong, it's counterproductive.
This is where my brain really started to light up when I was reading. He introduces this toolbox model. I think we need to spend some time on this because it's the mechanism. It explains the how. People nod along and say diversity is good, but they don't understand the physics of it.
Okay, let's visualize it. Page uses this really helpful metaphor of a landscape.
Yeah.
Imagine any complex problem. Curing a disease, writing a piece of software, is a giant, rugged mountain range.
Okay.
The altitude of any point on that landscape represents the quality of a potential solution. The highest peak in the entire range is the optimal solution. And we're all a team of climbers trying to get to the highest point possible.
So I'm a climber. What tools do I have in my backpack?
You have 2 primary types of tools in your cognitive toolbox. You have perspectives and you have heuristics.
Let's define those.
A perspective is how you see and represent the landscape. It's your internal map of the problem. Do you see it as a physics problem with equations? Or do you see it as a network graph? Or maybe as a human-centered design challenge? Your perspective determines which mountains you can even see in the first place.
Okay, so it's how I frame the problem, and what are heuristics?
A heuristic is your strategy for climbing the mountain. It's your set of rules for searching for better solutions. A simple heuristic might be, always take a step in the steepest upward direction. Another might be, if you get stuck, jump to a random new spot. Another could be, break the problem down into smaller subproblems.
Okay, I think I'm with you. So let's connect this back to Scalia. If I go out and hire the 10 smartest people, and they all have the same PhD in economics from the same university, taught by the same Nobel laureate, what happens?
What happens is you've hired 10 climbers who all have the exact same map, the same perspective, and the exact same climbing techniques, the same heuristics.
So they're all standing on the exact same spot on the mountain.
And they're all trying to climb it in the exact same way. Now, what happens if that starting point is on a hill that leads to a local peak? A solution that's pretty good, but it's not the best solution.
They all get stuck there together.
They all get stuck there together. They'll climb to the top of that local peak, look around, and agree that this is the highest they can go. They literally cannot see the true higher peak because it's hidden in the fog, and their shared map doesn't show a path to it.
This is where diversity comes in. This is the super additivity idea, right?
Yes, where 1 + 1 suddenly equals 3. If you take one of those elite economists and you replace them with, say, a cultural anthropologist or a military strategist or someone who grew up in a completely different country.
You've just dropped a new climber onto a totally different part of the mountain range.
Exactly. They have a different map. They might see a path that the whole group of geniuses missed. Their heuristic might be totally different. And they might be able to shout over, hey guys, you're on the wrong mountain. The real summit is over here.
So the math actually shows that a group of diverse problem solvers can consistently outperform a group of elite but homogeneous problem solvers.
On complex tasks, yes.
Yes.
And that's the punchline. Diversity isn't a tax on super-duper status. On the problems that actually matter in the knowledge economy, diversity is the source of the super-duper performance.
Wow. Okay, so that logically leads to what the chapter calls the triple alignment.
Which he calls the holy grail. This is when everything clicks. It's when neoclassical economics, which is just a fancy way of saying I want to maximize profit,
Right.
aligns with the diversity bonus, which says different ways of thinking lead to better outcomes. And that aligns with the overall mission, which is we want to cure cancer, or we want to build the world's best electric car.
When all three arrows point in the same direction.
When that happens, inclusion stops being a compliance issue. It's no longer something you have to police. You start actively chasing diversity because you're greedy for the bonus it provides. You're greedy for success.
I want to pivot now to how this actually plays out in the real world, because the theory is powerful, but the examples really drive it home. And the book uses this incredibly striking one from the U.S. intelligence community.
Yeah, and you can't really get a more high-stakes environment than that.
Not at all. So he describes this commemorative medallion like a challenge coin that's given out by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Side A is exactly what you'd imagine. It's the Liberty Eagle. It's got the arrows, the shield. Very Top Gun, very official.
Standard government stuff.
But then you flip it over. Side B has this abstract geometric pattern, and around the edge it says, intelligence community, equal employment opportunity, and diversity.
So they are literally stamping national security and diversity on two sides of the same coin.
They are saying these two things are inextricable. Now, you have to ask yourself the question, why? Is the CIA suddenly concerned with being woke?
I think we can safely assume the CIA doesn't do anything just to be nice.
Right. So what's the cold, hard logic?
The logic is that intelligence analysis is, at its core, a complex prediction problem. Their job is to predict the behavior of terrorists, of foreign governments, of marginalized groups who might become insurgents.
And if your analysis room is filled with, let's say, white, male, Ivy League educated, American-born analysts, and they're all looking at drone footage of a village in Waziristan.
They're all applying their specific cognitive toolkits to that data. They see a large gathering of men with guns. Their heuristics, their perspectives, their life experiences might lead them to one conclusion. They're plotting an attack.
Okay.
But someone who grew up in that culture, or a similar one, might look at the exact same image and see something totally different. They might say, wait, look at the way they're standing. Look at the type of guns they're carrying. Those are ceremonial. This isn't a war council. This is a wedding procession.
And that is the difference between a successful drone strike on a terrorist cell and a catastrophic war crime that creates 1,000 new enemies.
It's that visceral. It is that life and death. Identity diversity is a direct correlate for the specific domain knowledge you need to interpret the world correctly. If you don't have it, you have a massive cognitive blind spot. You are functionally illiterate in the language of the people you are trying to understand.
And this same principle applies to something with much lower stakes, but maybe more common, selling stuff. The section on marketing blunders was, it was genuinely painful to read.
The demographic blindness examples, they're almost comical if they weren't so damaging.
It's this mantra, nothing sold to us without us, but the failures are just staggering. Let's run through a few of them because the cringe factor is instructive. Beaner's Coffee.
Yes, a coffee shop chain in Michigan.
Beaner is a well-known, deeply offensive racial slur for people of Latino descent. How does a name like that make it all the way to the sign on the front of the store?
It gets through because every single person in the decision-making chain, from the marketing intern to the CEO, looked at that name and their heuristic was, oh, coffee beans, Beaners. It's kind of catchy. There wasn't a single person in a position of power to stand up and say, stop. Do you have any idea what that word means to millions of your potential customers?
It's a total failure of perspective. Then you have Sprint. They ran a video ad calling their competitor T-Mobile ghetto,
using race and socioeconomic status as a punchline to cell phone plans. Just incredible.
And the one that honestly made me put the book down for a second was the IHOP example, the receipt.
The whites only receipt.
Right. A server, trying to be efficient, typed whites only on a customer's receipt for an egg white omelet.
Yeah, let's analyze the heuristics there for a second. To the probably white server, maybe the white manager, whites only is just data compression. It's shorthand for egg whites only. It's logical within their frame of reference.
But to the black customer who receives that piece of paper,
it is a direct echo of Jim Crow. It is the sign that hung on water fountains, on restaurants, on schools, telling them they were not welcome, that they were subhuman. It's a trigger for generations of trauma.
And the server probably wasn't even trying to be malicious. That's what's so insidious. It wasn't an act of hate. It was a symptom of a system that lacked the perspective to see how its actions would be perceived.
Exactly. And this is why you see big companies like Verizon and General Mills starting to put immense pressure on their ad agencies to diversify their teams. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts.
They're doing it because demographic blindness was costing them market share. You can't insult your customers and expect them to keep buying your product. It's just bad business.
It reminds me of the IDEO example in the book, which is a bit lighter but follows the same logic. The story-centric design and the popcorn popper.
Right, so IDEO is famous for this design process where they just go and watch how real people live their lives to get ideas for new products.
And they were working on a new popcorn maker. The key question was, what kind of popcorn maker should we build? Do people make a small personal bowl for themselves or a giant party-sized bowl to share?
So they go and observe a Japanese family using their current popcorn maker. And they notice something odd. The family keeps their soy sauce on the counter, not in the refrigerator.
Now, if you are a monocultural design team from California, you have a problem. You have to guess. Is this one family just a little quirky? Or is this a widespread Japanese cultural practice?
And if you guess wrong, you might design the wrong product. You might design a soy sauce bottle that has to be refrigerated, which would fail in that market.
Right. You need someone on the team who has that cultural knowledge, who can immediately say, oh, no, that's normal. That's not idiosyncratic. You need someone who knows the code.
And this is a huge warning that the chapter gives. There's a danger here.
A massive danger. The risk of siloing people?
Explain that.
It's the risk of saying, okay, we'll hire a Latino executive, and his job will be our Latino expert.
The book has this really cynical quote for it. Come tell us about your people so that we may sell them more soap.
It's just gross. It's tokenism. It reduces a person's entire identity and cognitive repertoire to being a demographic informant.
And beyond being insulting, it's also incredibly inefficient from a business perspective.
Totally inefficient. That woman you just hired might be a world-class expert in supply chain management, but you've stuck her in head of marketing to women. You are wasting her talent. You want her unique perspective on your logistics problems, on your financial modeling, on all your complex problems, not just the ones that seem to relate to her demographic.
This feels like a good transition to maybe the most relevant part of the chapter for a public policy course, the camel.
The old adage. A camel is a horse designed by a committee.
This is the classic counter-argument to the whole diversity bonus idea, right? If you put too many different people with too many different opinions in a room, don't you just get paralysis and chaos?
You absolutely can. And this is where the theory gets much more nuanced and interesting. The diversity bonus only materializes under one critical condition. The group must have a shared mission.
Write that down.
Let's go back to our mountain climbing metaphor. If everyone on the team agrees on which mountain we're trying to climb, say our mission is cure Alzheimer's or build the safest, most profitable airline, then our different perspectives are a massive asset.
We argue about the best path up the mountain.
We argue, we debate, we challenge each other's assumptions, but all that conflict is constructive because we're all trying to get to the same peak.
But what if we're all trying to climb different mountains?
Then you get a camel. If one person's goal is to design a fast racehorse, another person wants a durable pack animal for the desert, and a third person wants something that can store water for a long time, you match all those goals together, and you get a creature that's not particularly good at anything.
And the book points to the U.S. Congress as the ultimate camel.
It's the perfect and perhaps tragic example. Congress is incredibly diverse, demographically, cognitively, experientially. It has all the raw material for a massive diversity bonus. But does it have a shared mission?
In theory, the mission is promote the general welfare. But in practice, not a chance. The mission of a representative from rural Wyoming is fundamentally different from the mission of a representative from the Bronx.
Their constituents want them to climb completely different mountains. And because their goals are divergent, their diversity doesn't create synergy. It creates gridlock, incoherent legislation, and compromises that make everyone unhappy. It produces a camel.
So for the students listening to this, the future city managers and agency directors, is it even possible to avoid the camel problem in the public sector?
That is probably the single hardest challenge of public management. In a private company, the CEO can, by fiat, declare the mission. Our mountain is profit. In a democracy, the mission itself is the subject of constant negotiation.
So what's the lesson?
The lesson from the book is that if you're leading a team, you have to be relentless about defining the mission. You have to manufacture unity of purpose. You have to frame the problem in a way that your diverse team can agree on the destination, even if they fight like cats and dogs about the best route to get there.
It's the difference between constructive conflict and just chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want a team of devil's advocates who are all trying to pressure test your plan to get up the mountain. You do not want people who are trying to drag the whole expedition to a different mountain range entirely.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the really big money, the financial case. We cannot have a conversation about the business case without talking about Wall Street and specifically BlackRock.
Larry Fink. At the time the book was written, he was managing something like $5 trillion. Today, it's closer to $10 trillion.
Just for scale, that is more money than the entire annual GDP of any country on Earth except for the US and China.
So when Larry Fink writes a letter to CEOs, it's not a suggestion, it's a command. And around 2014, he started sending a very clear signal to the corporate world. We expect to see diversity on your boards.
And the question is why? I'm fairly certain Larry Fink isn't doing this because he's a passionate social justice warrior.
No. The logic is ice cold. It comes down to two extremely hard-nosed financial factors: client services and alpha.
Alpha meaning market outperformance.
Correct. Beating the market. So let's say client services first. Who is giving BlackRock all that money to manage? It's not just a few billionaires. A huge chunk of it comes from public pension funds.
The California Public Employees Retirement System, the New York State Teachers Retirement System.
Exactly. And who sits on the boards of those pension funds?
Yeah.
Union leaders, teachers, firefighters, police officers, diverse groups of people.
So there's a trust factor at play.
A huge one. Imagine you're that diverse pension board, and you walk into a meeting at a potential asset manager, and you see a boardroom table with 25 white guys in identical suits. There is a subconscious and sometimes very conscious disconnect. You're thinking, do these people really understand our needs? Do they understand the world we live in?
So from BlackRock's perspective, diversity isn't about morality. It's a client acquisition and retention strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the alpha argument, the performance.
Where does that connect?
It goes right back to our mountain climbing model. The stock market is a complex adaptive system. It's the ultimate complex problem.
Hmm.
If you have a team of portfolio managers who all went to the same business school, read the same newspapers, and vacation in the same spots,
They're all going to have the same perspective. They'll all see the same opportunities, and more importantly, they'll all miss the same risks.
they will all buy Enron at the same time, and they will all sell it at the same time. To beat the market, to generate alpha, you need to see things that the rest of the market is missing. You need a divergent perspective. Fink and others realized that homogeneous boards and management teams were a massive risk factor. They were susceptible to groupthink.
But Wall Street has this powerful mythos about being a pure meritocracy. The line is always, we don't care if you're green, purple, or blue. If you can make money, you have a job.
It's the great Wall Street myth, and Page's book dismantles it beautifully with a simple logic trap.
Okay, walk us through the trap.
It's based on 3 statements. Premise 1, talent, intelligence, and ambition are more or less normally distributed across the entire human population. There are brilliant women, brilliant men, brilliant people of every race and background in roughly equal proportions.
Okay, I think we can accept that as scientifically sound.
Premise 2, Wall Street is a true meritocracy that identifies and hires the most talented people, regardless of their background.
That's their claim.
Observation 3, the senior ranks of Wall Street are overwhelmingly dominated by white men.
Ah, I see the problem.
You cannot hold all 3 of those statements to be true at the same time. One of them has to be false. So either talent is not equally distributed, which is a racist and sexist position, or Wall Street is not a true meritocracy.
So the lack of diversity is in itself mathematical proof that their hiring system is broken.
It's proof that their heuristics for identifying talent are flawed. It's a signal that they are consistently leaving talent on the table because they're only fishing in a tiny familiar pond instead of the entire ocean. And if you're a long-term investor like BlackRock, a company that leaves talent on the table is a badly managed company.
And that's where this whole ESG, environmental, social, and governance movement came from. It wasn't originally about saving the planet.
Not at all. It was a risk management framework. A company with bad governance, or one that ignored social factors like the diversity of its talent pool, was seen as having a higher risk of long-term failure. It was a proxy for quality of management.
There's a perfect story in the chapter that captures this tension between short-term profit and long-term talent management. The big tech CEO meeting with President Trump.
Oh, yeah. The photo of Tim Cook from Apple, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook,
Yeah.
all sitting around the table at Trump Tower.
Now, from a purely short-term profit perspective, these CEOs should have been thrilled. The Trump administration was pushing for tax repatriation, which would let companies like Apple bring back hundreds of billions of dollars they had parked overseas, virtually tax-free.
For Apple, that was a potential $50 billion windfall, a massive immediate boost to the bottom line. That's the short-term profit mountain.
But then just a few weeks later, the administration issued the immigration ban, targeting several Muslim-majority countries.
And suddenly, the calculus got a lot more complicated.
Tim Cook came out and publicly, forcefully opposed the ban. Why would he do that? Why would he risk angering the administration that was about to hand him a $50 billion check? Was he just being a political activist?
No, he was being a ruthless CEO, protecting his most valuable asset,
His talent pipeline.
his global talent pipeline. In the knowledge economy, your most important raw material is human brains. If Apple can't hire the single smartest machine learning expert in the world because she happens to have been born in Iran, Apple doesn't get that brain. A competitor in Germany or Canada does.
So Cook was making a calculated decision that the long-term strategic cost of cutting off his access to global talent was far greater than the short-term benefit of the tax cut.
Exactly. It's a perfect illustration of the diversity bonus logic in action. Successful firms understand that their long-term survival depends on having access to the entire cognitive repertoire of the human species.
Which brings us to another key point. Context matters. Not every company has the same needs as Apple.
Right. This isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. The book does this fantastic comparison between Waste Management Corporation and Microsoft.
I love this because they couldn't be more different.
Waste Management, a $14 billion company. Their business is garbage trucks, landfills, recycling centers.
So what's their primary business case for diversity?
It's overwhelmingly demographic. They have 40,000 employees, many of them in physically demanding blue-collar jobs. They have a constant need for labor. They simply cannot afford to exclude any segment of the population from their hiring pool because they have a massive operational need for bodies.
So if you look at their list of corporate values, diversity and inclusion is on there, but it's listed as number 5. It comes after safety, ethics, and customer focus.
Right. For them, the mountain they're climbing every day is safely and efficiently pick up the trash. Diversity is a necessary condition for having a crew big enough to climb that mountain. It's not the primary goal itself.
Now, compare that to Microsoft.
Microsoft sells ideas. They fill code, cloud services, artificial intelligence. Their most valuable assets ride down the elevator and go home every night.
Yeah.
If they stop innovating, they don't just lose market share, they become irrelevant. They die.
So for Microsoft, when they list their values, diversity is number 3, right near the top. And the language they use is all about invitation. We actively seek and invite diversity.
Because for them, the business case is overwhelmingly the bonus logic. They are desperate for new ideas, new perspectives, new heuristics. They need the cognitive variation to solve the next generation of complex problems. Waste Management's business model is about maximizing reliability. Microsoft's is about maximizing innovation.
And we see this same pattern play out in the stats on corporate boardrooms. This part was really eye-opening. Where do you find women on boards?
So according to the data of the book, women held about 16% of board seats in the S&P 1500. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is the distribution.
Right. If you look at consumer goods companies or retail,
It's over 20%.
which makes perfect intuitive sense. Women make the vast majority of consumer purchasing decisions. If you're selling soap or shoes or food, you damn well better have the perspective of your primary customer represented at the highest level of your company.
It's a clear application of the bonus logic. But now look at other industries. Look at semiconductors or energy companies.
The number plummets. It drops to 9 or 10%.
So you have to ask why. It's not like women don't use computers or electricity.
The perception, and it's almost certainly a flawed one, is that those industries are purely technical. The boards of those companies think, we don't need to understand the customer's feelings, we just need to build a better microchip.
But based on everything we've just discussed about complex tasks, that's a catastrophic mistake.
A huge one. Designing a next-generation semiconductor is an incredibly complex task. Figuring out the future of energy is one of the most complex problems humanity faces.
And by systematically excluding the perspectives of half the population from their boardrooms, those companies are intentionally shrinking their cognitive repertoire. They are trying to climb the hardest mountains in the world with only half a set of tools. It's managerial malpractice.
So let's bring this all together. The end of the chapter really focuses on the power of pragmatism.
It's about giving the argument for diversity some armor.
I really like that phrasing. Because an argument based on values is soft. It can be dismissed. An argument based on bonuses is hard. It's measurable.
Precisely. If your company's only rationale for diversity is the normative one, we do this because it's the right thing to do, what happens when you hit a recession?
It's the first thing to get cut. The diversity budget gets slashed.
Right. The logic becomes, we can't afford the luxury of being good right now. We need to focus on survival.
But if your rationale is the bonus argument,
Then diversity becomes the tool you use to survive the recession. You don't fire your best engineers in a crisis. You lean on them to innovate you out of the crisis. If diversity is framed as a core part of your innovation engine, it becomes recession-proof. It becomes essential.
the book uses the example of hidden figures to cap this all off. NASA in the 1960s.
Such a powerful story. We all know the movie now. These brilliant African-American women working as mathematicians in the segregated South. NASA did not hire them because it was some bastion of progressive social values.
It was in Virginia in the Jim Crow era. It was the opposite of that.
They hired them for two very pragmatic reasons. They had a demographic problem,
Yeah.
a massive shortage of mathematicians, because many of the men were involved in the war effort. And they had an existential cognitive problem. They needed to solve incredibly complex orbital mechanics equations, or their astronauts were going to die in space.
They needed the math, and they didn't care who did it.
The pragmatism of the mission forced the door open. The undeniable bonus they provided, calculating the trajectories that got John Glenn into orbit and back-proved their value beyond any shadow of a doubt. And that, over time, began to change the culture.
And the book's final prediction is that we're seeing this play out again. The next generation of hidden figures will be, Latino mathematicians revolutionizing logistics, or Arab-American biostatisticians cracking the code of the human genome.
And it won't happen because of a government mandate. It'll happen because companies are realizing they're at a competitive disadvantage without them. They simply cannot win if they ignore that talent.
And just quickly, there's a final note on universities, which is fitting since this is for a university course.
Right. Universities are sort of the unique case where all three pillars are standing at once. They have a deep normative mission to create a just and inclusive society. They have a demographic reality. Their student bodies are incredibly diverse. And they have a powerful goal. Bonus case, decades of research shows that students learn more and think more critically when they are in diverse learning environments.
So universities are one of the few places where all three arguments are pulling in the same direction.
They have to weigh them all.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us? For the students of PP 53621 who have to go out and actually manage public organizations?
I think it means we have to be more sophisticated in how we talk about and implement diversity initiatives. We need to stop seeing it as just a feel-good HR program and start seeing it as a strategic leadership tool. We have to constantly ask ourselves, is the team I'm building a camel, or are we building a dreamliner?
And that leads me right to the final provocative thought I want to leave everyone with.
Is that
Okay, we've spent this whole time talking about the camel. We've established, based on the theory, that diversity without a shared mission doesn't create a bonus. It creates gridlock, dysfunction, chaos.
Yes, that's the core principle.
So if we look at our broader political system today, at Congress, at the state of our public discourse, at the deep polarization we see everywhere, is the problem really that our country is too diverse? Or is the problem that we have lost the collective ability to define a shared American mission? And here's the really scary part. If we can no longer agree on which mountain we're trying to climb, does the diversity that should be our greatest strength actually become a penalty? Does it accelerate our dysfunction?
That is the dark side of this theory. Without that unity of purpose, the bonus can evaporate and even turn negative.
Something to think about while you're working on next week's paper.
A big something.
Good luck with the rest of the reading and see you in the next study session.